I'm trapped on the edge of an abyss. I don't think I'm the first person to be here. Oh my god, I think it went through. The internet is still super spotty, and nothing is loading right, but from what I can tell, the last post I wrote actually made it out there. That would make this forum the only place it seems. My phone died just a little after my last update, and I never got to check if I actually was able to send a flare up. You have no idea how much better it makes me feel to know that one did. Especially with everything I've learned in the last few days, I think things are going to get so much worse if I don't find a way out of here soon. If you missed my original call for help, I'll try to link it, but if you already know my situation, let me fill you in on what's happened since I've been gone. I lay on the floor under that desk in the radio station for a while, almost resigning the room to be my tomb. I was cold and tired and hungry. Most of all, I was afraid. My phone was nearing its end, and while every part of me wanted to keep trying to call for help, I'd already made so many posts to no avail that I decided it was a waste of battery. Instead, I opened my phone app one more time. I knew trying to call was a dead end, too, but I wasn't there for that. Instead, I opened my voicemail, then paused for a long while, hovering my finger over the first missed call from Trevor. I knew that whatever was waiting for me on the other side wasn't going to be good. I'd been gone on my trip for nearly 2 days by the time he left it, and he was probably going to be furious at me for ghosting him the whole time. Still, my heart was so empty and desperately longed for something familiar, and all I wanted to hear was his voice one last time. I shut my eyes and pressed play. There was silence at first, and just the sound of his soft breathing was enough to make water well beneath my lids. It got even worse when he spoke. Of course, he had to prove me wrong about being mad. "Hey, Hen," he began softly. "I know you're still trying to sort things out, and I didn't want to bother you while you did that, but I miss you. And I just wanted you to know that. This isn't a call to try to get you to come home. Take all the time you need. I'm sorry that I got so upset with you before you left. I know this has all been hard for you, especially since your mom." He tapered back into silence, searching for the right words. He always felt like he needed to. He never liked to misstep. It was one of the things I couldn't stand about him. Just one time I wanted him to blurt what he was thinking and not keep it so close to his chest. I suppose he was probably afraid to, given that the one time he did, I couldn't take it and walked out. Left on my trip that started this mess in the first place. "Anyway," he began again awkwardly, "whenever you decide to come home, I'll be here for you. And I'm okay now. With whatever you want to do, I'm okay with that. I just want to be here with you for it all. So just be safe, okay? Take it easy now, and when you get home, we'll fight whatever battles we need to fight together." His last words made my heart sting. "I love you." I was fully sobbing now as I let my phone fall to my chest and placed my hands to my forehead. How had all of this happened? How had I landed myself here? Was this hell? Had I died on the road, and this was punishment for leaving everyone back home? Total isolation? Alone in a town on a lonely abyss? Nothing but monsters for company? I could handle being dead, that was fine. At least then Trevor and my dad would have some sort of closure back home. But if I had gone missing, If me and my car were snapped to this place without a trace, then they would think I'd just left for good. Gone off on my own to live the rest of my miserable life. Then I swallowed hard and choked down the rest of my tears. I didn't have the strength to listen to the other voice messages. There were more from Trevor and a couple from my dad, but they were from later in my trip, and I couldn't hear them desperate and panicked. It would hurt too much. I suppose it wouldn't have mattered anyway, though. The next time I picked up the device, it was dead. For the next blur of days, I thought long and hard about Trevor and Dad, and about the voicemail, about what he'd said, and about my thoughts that followed. This could be hell, but I knew it wasn't. I could be dead, but I knew I wasn't. I knew it because I still had that familiar ache in my bones and fatigue in my muscles. I was alive, and though I said I'd be okay if that were the opposite, I wasn't about to die here. Back home, Trevor told me he was willing to fight. That meant I needed to fight too. Rolling from my hiding spot, I made my way to the bathroom and gulped down some rusty chalk water, the cold, harsh fluid stinging my empty gut on the way down. Once I was done, I moved to where I knew a window was and peered out, looking toward the main road. By some miracle, I could see the light of my car still slicing up the street, the engine still idling from when I'd left it running. I knew it wouldn't be long before it died, however, given that it'd been chugging for nearly 2 days now. That wasn't important, though. There was nowhere to drive it anyway. What I cared about was the brighter white glow behind it. The vending machines. They had food in them, and while it was awfully suspicious how pristine it looked, it was always an option. That was a backup one, however. For now, I needed to explore some more. There was bound to be something in this building that I could eat. I just hoped that whatever had chased me here wasn't still lurking in the hall. The image of that man's flesh crumpling and flying up into the dark is still burned into my eyes, and I can see it perfectly when I stare too long in one spot. It's still impossibly dark in this place, but somehow I seem to have gained the slightest bit of night vision after being here so long. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me for being in shadow for so long, but as I began to move and test it out, I found that I could make out the vaguest of silhouettes and outlines. I still need to move fairly slow, and I'm not sure I understand how my eyes were even able to adjust in such pure dark. But I have bigger mysteries to solve, and I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Building my courage, I finally found the guts to approach the exit to the room and reach for the handle. Taking a deep breath and readying myself, I threw it open, then stepped back quickly, bracing for anything. To my relief, the hall looked vacant. From there, I began to comb the building. I stayed away from the first floor for now, not wanting to be at ground level, and instead opted for the other 2 floors. The structure was pretty densely packed, and there were a lot of rooms to check, mostly offices or storage areas. But finally, I came across what I'd hoped to find: a break room. The smell of mildew and mold hung heavy in the air, the decay that I'd seen outside from my car seemingly bleeding into every crevice now. I stepped over a cupboard door that had rotted off the wall and moved into the littered space with low hopes, unsure if I even wanted to eat anything I might find here. Still, I was desperate, so I carried on to the 2 silhouettes I could make out against the wall. More vending machines. Unlike the motel ones, these were very much out of order, offering no light or hum of life to the space. I could feel and hear glass crunch beneath my shoes as I stepped close to them. Then, carefully, eyeing the outline of the window, reached my hand inside and felt around. My fingers brushed over the metal coils that once held snacks as I grazed row after row until finally I heard the familiar crinkle of foil. Like a feral animal, I snatched the bag free and panted heavily, struggling with my meager strength to even pry the damn thing open. The bag was dusty and covered in grime, but I didn't care so long as I could shovel whatever was inside down my gullet. Finally, the seal popped open, and I fished my hand inside, scooping at the chips within and wrapping my fingers around them. My desperate excitement turned to disappointment when I felt what was there, however. As if made of sand, my knuckle dragged against a chip and crumpled it. Frantically, I moved to feel for a new one, but as my digits stirred around, I only turned more food into ash. I was about to say screw it and pour the dust into my mouth, but when the bag raised to my face and some of the dust puffed to my nose, I recoiled in disgust. A sharp, raunchy odor belched from the foil, and I tossed it away fast. What the hell? I muttered between coughs, trying to clear any traces of whatever that was from my lungs. How on earth had chips gone that bad? They're one of the few foods that never really do. Figuring I must have grabbed something that wasn't crisps, I felt around for something different and tried again. Same effect. If anything, that bag smelled worse. In frustration, I threw it to the floor before dusting my hand off against my thigh. Damn it, of course it wouldn't be that easy, I whispered aloud. Turning for the cupboards, I tried those too, checking everything I found within to see if it was something edible. I finally found a container of some kind of powder before popping the lid and sniffing it. Coffee. It was decidedly coffee, at least at one point. Now it, too, was infected with some kind of rot. Sliding it back onto the counter, I let out a sigh and leaned against a table, casting my head to the floor. If the whole town had fallen to decay, then it was more than likely that no matter where I found food, it was going to be rotted from the inside. It felt less like the food had gone bad, and more like this place and everything in it was just one big corpse. A dead body on the edge of time, just rotting away. There was only one spot in town that I knew was safe from this, and I really didn't want to go back there. Prolonging the inevitable, I stepped back into the main hall and figured I may as well check the rest of the building while I was there. Good excuse, Hensley, I said aloud, eyeing the third-floor stairs. I've always been one to talk to myself, but given my current circumstances, the need to do so has been kicked up to 11. Creeping up the steps, I came face to face with a set of double doors, a push bar on either one. My heart thrummed softly as I moved close, fear of the unknown strong with every step. I set my hand on the bar and pushed. Like a brick wall, there was yet another wave of stench waiting on the other side, but this one was so much worse than the chips. It was a pungent, rancid metallic salty mixed with a nauseating sweet, and it flooded every part of my airway, whether I breathed or not. I immediately doubled over against the door to dry heave, glad that I hadn't found any food in the last room, then back out to the stairs again, letting the door swing shut behind me. I sat in the corridor retching and catching my breath for a moment, suffering the pain in my stomach from its convulsions. Even though I was separated from it by the door again, I'd broken a seal, and I could still smell the rotten egg scent clear as day as it clung to my nostrils. Something was dead in there. That was all I could think in that moment. I'd never smelled a dead body before, but I'd somehow knew that's exactly what one smelled like. I prayed that it wasn't, and that it was just another piece of rotten food, but I knew better. I had two options in that moment. I could just go back downstairs and head for the vending machines like I desperately needed to. My body was already in poor shape when I'd gotten here, and not eating this long couldn't be good for it. Once I had food in me, I'd be able to think a lot clearer and therefore make more rational decisions about my situation. On the other hand, I knew I would have to come back here eventually if I wanted to figure out why there was self-service. The room I was currently outside of had to be the broadcasting station, and if there were answers to be had, they were in there. At the moment, there were already too many mysteries piling up, and right now, the one thing I wanted even more than food was just to get even the slightest semblance of a clue what was going on. Maybe it was dangerous, or maybe I wouldn't like what I found on the other side of that door, but I was probably going to die soon anyway, so I figured that I may as well risk it now. Besides, if I threw up, what more damage could I do to my already empty stomach? Pulling my hoodie over my nose, I braced for impact, then swung the door open. The room was big, spanning the entire floor. My eyes went on a frantic scan to make sure that nothing was inside, a difficult task with how many shapes were in the dark. After scrutinizing each of them and finding they didn't move, I decided it was safe and stepped inside. The rot was dizzying, and I could feel saliva coating my mouth from gagging so hard, but I pushed on, investigating the space the best I could. To one side of the room, there were cameras set up and pointing at a small newscaster desk, the chairs that were once behind them tipped over and laying on the floor. On the other side, it looked like a sectioned-off recording booth for local announcements and radio broadcasts. In the middle, the main bulk of the tech and computers sat. Connected to it all, a gentle buzz emanating from a few of the larger machines. A bit of excitement jumped into my throat. Even more so when I saw a bit of light glimmering from one of the monitors. It felt like a beacon among the void, and I ran to it like it was one. The smell in the air fell to the wayside for only a brief moment as I moved for that computer. But when I cleared the desks and rounded the corner, I quickly jumped back to the forefront. I had found its source. What lay on the floor a few feet away, just beneath the desk that the computer sat on, was not a body. It was only half of one. A pair of legs lazily splayed out on the ground and lit by the soft glow of the screen looming above it. Shock was my initial reaction, but my stomach churned the more I took them in. They lay in a pool of blood that spanned nearly the entire workspace, little bits of meat, bone, and skin flecking it like spots. The khaki pants that their owner wore were now stained mostly red, along with their shoes, and a belt still clung to the waist that had barely made the cut. Then I got to the top half. I was dreading that part. I had seen people get sliced in half in movies or shows, but nothing can prepare you for seeing something like that in real life. It's too surreal. The body doesn't sever in a way you can imagine, even in your wildest nightmares. I learned in that moment that skin can be cut so clean that it looks like fake rubber. What was worse was that I couldn't even tell what had happened to him. It'd be so easy to imagine a beast like the one by my car ripping him in half with sharp claws, but inspecting the corpse, that didn't even seem close to what happened. I could hardly see any of his innards. From right where his stomach began, his body had been perfectly cut in half. Then looked like it was violently smashed down. Like the top of a folded paper bag, his skin was almost fused back to itself on either side of the hole, sealing him up like he'd never even had a top half. The little bits of flesh poking through told me that wasn't the case, however. He'd simply been crushed so fast and hard that it was that clean. I wondered if the creature I'd encountered back at the vending machines had done it, but thought otherwise. That beast had used all of its victim's skin. This didn't seem to match. That implied a very different sobering thought, however. There were multiple beasts roaming around. I can't tell you how long I stood there for, staring in shock. I had prepared myself to find the source of the scent, but never could have guessed this. Luckily, I don't think I ever came out of that state because it was the only way I could bring myself to step closer to the computer. Whatever had done this clearly wasn't still here, or it probably would have attacked me by now, so I took the moment to search the room before I lost the courage. Okay, I softly reassured myself. It's okay. My eyes stayed as high as possible, keeping the body out of sight until the screen was all I could see. I had been wrong. It wasn't a full computer. It was a laptop. A massive one at that, like if one from the 90s had been reimagined for a modern age. It sat patiently on the table, a soft logo bouncing on its screen. It looked like a side profile silhouette of a bird perched atop the word Kingfisher. I tried to endure the rancid smell now completely engulfing me as I gingerly reached out to the touchpad. I dragged my fingers across it to wake the device up, then held my breath as the screen changed. Disappointment washed over me as it popped to a login screen with the same logo, a bar asking for a password beneath it. I should have figured. Moving my hand back to my side, I tried not to shudder as I felt my fingertips were now wet and sticky, covered in a dark liquid that I hadn't noticed splashed across the keyboard. Glancing around the desk, I hoped that maybe there was a sticky note or something left with the login, but I knew it was a long shot. I did notice a cable connected to the side of the laptop, however, and following it, I found it led up to a pillar in the middle of the computer area. Giving it a second inspection now, I realized that it wasn't actually a pillar. It was a massive server box or something from floor to ceiling. There was a few dim blinking LEDs within that showed me there was power and it was on, but other than that I had no idea what it was supposed to be. My gaze traced it up to the ceiling to find there were several much thicker cables strapped to the top of the obelisk like tentacles. They ran off to the corners of the room in random directions before disappearing into the dark, but some of them ran straight upward. There was a couple skylights in this room that I hadn't spotted, 4 that spanned each corner, and one large circular one that funneled up toward the building's crown. The radio tower. I placed my fingers to the laptop's screen and pushed it back, angling it up to shine the light toward the spire. Even its meager glow cut through the dark like a search lamp. I could see the cables run through the edges of the skylight and wind up the tower out of sight. The metal tangle loomed imposingly over me like a monster of its own, but something about it was different from when I'd first seen it. The light was off. The little red star that had guided me here was no longer present, and all that was in its place was a cloud of shadow. I was wondering what had changed, but that's when I saw that one skylight farthest away from me was shattered, the light from the laptop not glistening in the empty frame like the others. I don't know why, but that made my skin crawl, and I decided it was my cue to keep moving. Whatever had mutilated the body currently at my feet most likely came in through there, and I was just shining a signal into that sky for it to see. I snapped the laptop shut and scooped it up, then moved to the edge of the room that I knew my car was on, looking off toward the motel. I could still see the dispenser lights shining, but it looked like my old reliable steed had finally given out. Turning for the stairs once more, I began to move toward them. I slowed as I saw another soft glow through a different window, casting fingers of light between the buildings. I crossed to the glass to get a quick, better look, trying to gauge where it was coming from. Luckily, it was easy to tell. The light was scaling the side of the cliff face. It looked like its source was somewhere back against the town's great wall. Making a mental note to investigate later, Another breath gave me a sharp reminder that I was on my way out. I dashed back into the hall, then shut the door, gasping in breaths of semi-fresh air and trying to get realigned. My stomach felt like a tumble dryer as it tried to churn anything, but found nothing to use. I began stumbling down the stairs while leaning heavy on the railing, trying to reassure myself as I went. We'll feel better once we get some food. We're really going out there right now? I heard my mind say back, so defiant with fear that it almost felt like its own voice. We don't have a choice, I muttered. The walk back to the machines was slow, agonizing, and most of all, petrifying. I clung close to the edges of the buildings, practically sliding against them, and squinted my eyes hard against the dark, trying to make out any vague shapes against the night. I could have used the laptop tucked under my arm, but somehow I felt more safe not seeing directly. I felt cloaked in the shadow even though I knew the things out there could definitely see me. Still, the light made me feel exposed. I hadn't run as far as it had felt that first time, and it wasn't long before I rounded the corner back onto Main Street. I could see the motel light casting onto the sidewalk and spilling onto the road, highlighting the edges of my car as well as a chilling pile of crumpled clothes. A steady drumbeat played in my ears while my feet kept tempo, moving closer and closer to the machines and shaking more the closer I got. I paused when I reached the corner of the building, then with a deep breath, I peeked my head around. Nothing. Not wasting a second, I dashed for the snack machine and placed my hands on either side of it like it might run off should I not. Just as I'd hoped, within all the food was still good, its bags and wrappers perfectly crisp and shiny. My stomach let out a furious groan as I stared, reminding me of the pain there. So, barely thinking, I leaned back on one leg and raised the other. I stopped myself just before I could deliver the killing blow to the glass. Was this the best idea? If something was still lurking out there, smashing the glass was a surefire way to alert it that I'd come back outside. I still had money in my car, and while it would be slower to buy snacks one by one, it would certainly be the more stealthy option. As much as I wanted to break it and loot as many bags of chips, candy, and chocolate bars as I could, I forced myself to lower my foot, then turn toward my vehicle. For now, I'd buy as much as I could and pray that nothing saw me out here, then come back and smash it should I run out. Moving to my lifeless vehicle, I scanned the main road for any signs of movement. My chest felt like it was going to burst as I approached the car, lit only by the ghastly white glow of the machines behind me. The image of the pale arm on the top of the roof flooded my brain and begged me to halt, but I did my best to shake them off. It was hard when I got to the pile of clothes left from the skin the creature was using, however. I gingerly stepped over them and tugged on my passenger side door, swinging it open, then leaning inside. Frantically, I set to work grabbing up all my possessions and stuffing them in my backpack, along with the laptop. Aside from my cash, I was relieved to have my phone charger again, hoping that I might be able to get the dead slab up and running again. Once I had it all, I slung the sack over my shoulder, then turned back around, nearly letting out a shriek as something grabbed my leg. I looked down and jumped away fast, then sighed in pure relief as I saw that I'd only wrapped my ankles up in the work jacket still laying on the concrete. Eyeing the thing, I pursed my lips to the side, frowning and biting my cheek. I really didn't want to, but it had been positively frigid here, and I hadn't packed for cold weather on my trip. With my new jacket on, I slotted every cent that I had into the vending machine, buying anything that looked good at first. I couldn't even wait once the first bag dropped into the hopper. I tore it out, then opened it, then devoured everything inside before the next bag even hit the bottom again. Once I was slightly satiated, I began planning out my choices a little more, doing the best one can with only junk food options to get the most nutrients. By the time I was done, I had my pack stuffed full of food and was feeling much, much better about my survival on that front. My stomach was still a little nauseous and in pain, but that was to be expected with how long I'd gone without food. I just hoped I hadn't done any irreparable damage. And that was that. My eyes once again scanned the empty streets, relieved to see I was alone. I was ready to take back off for my foxhole to hide for several more days, but I had to stop myself. I wanted to go back to the station and hide, curl back up under my desk and hope that help would come find me. I knew by then that nobody was, though, and that meant it was up to me to keep searching. And since there was still no sign of my angler friend, I moved through the town streets again, this time blowing past my former shelter and continuing on toward the cliffside. Occasionally, I would catch glimpses of my destination bursting through the dark, and noted that this new light had to be much brighter than the vending machine to be so radiant. The wall of stone slowly stood taller and taller as I approached, its face glaring down at me and threatening that I back away. I didn't let fear get the better of me as I carried on, the light so close now. When I rounded the corner, I could see that the source was actually built into the cliff. It was a giant porch floodlight, mounted 10 feet off the ground, casting its gleam across the surrounding stone and buildings. I was in an alleyway behind a small mall outlet, dumpsters and trash cans shyly creaking as I passed. These were the least interesting things back here, however. Beneath the light, clearly its focus, was a massive steel door. It was rusted to all hell, and the paint on its surface was chipped terribly, but I could still read what it said. A logo of a bird perched on the word Kingfisher. A flourish of excitement played in my heart, and I picked up the pace a bit, the pain in my gut falling into the background. I hadn't driven down this alleyway my first time around town, and without the lights off, I would have never even considered there might be something back here. Reaching the door, I eyed it up and down carefully. There was no way I was going to break through it, that was for sure. It looked dense like a ship hull, and was clearly mechanical. 2 steel slabs that slid together and locked shut. Judging by how small the crack was between them, I didn't think prying would be an option either. Looking left first, I noticed something else carved into the stone face. There was a hatch, maybe 4 feet wide in any direction. It looked like a garbage chute, and when I curiously grabbed the handle and tugged, it slid out like one too. It certainly smelled like one. Rancid, pungent odor like back at the station wafted up from the dark, and though my stinging stomach urged me to shut the lid, I swallowed hard and peeked my head in, hoping maybe it'd be a way to get past the door. The shaft went down, however, and with the dark so strong, there was no chance I was going to see its bottom. Letting the hatch fall shut, I backed away and read the scratched letters painted on the front. Imprint deposit. My brow furrowed as I turned the phrase over in my head, trying to figure out what it could possibly mean. While I did so, my eyes checked the last feature of note regarding the chute. A small wedge jutting out of the panel's side, sporting a glass pane over an LED screen. It looked like an electric meter of sorts, as near the bottom of the screen, 1 bar of the vintage orange strip was lit up. Whatever the machine was, it was running on low. My stomach gave a lurch that made me fall onto the wall in support, reminding me that I had been out in the open an awfully long time. I swallowed the pain down and stood back up, however. I was not about to give in to the nausea and give up precious nutrients. Besides, there was one last thing to check. Another password. I muttered in grief as I approached the keypad. Haphazardly, I checked a few of the metal keys, then pressed confirm, but obviously it didn't open. I released a disappointed sigh, but then saw something behind it. Wedged between the box and the stone wall, a folded piece of paper was stuck in the crack. My heart beat fast as I moved for it, and I did a quick glance around as I unfolded the sheet. I was hoping for good news, a password, the door code, a damn answer to what was going on. Anything. I should have known better by now than to hope. What it read was this: Dr. Shea has abandoned us. We've been left to die. Not that you all care, you with your righteous goals and self-imposed destiny. It was probably exactly what he was instructed to do. I once believed in this organization. I thought I was doing good by coming aboard. Thought I was breaking new ground for the good of humanity. What a sick joke. I should have known the truth the moment I saw this place. We have no idea what we're doing here. We can't even pretend to fathom it. Do you even know what's going on? What the thing from below is? We thought we had a handle on all the creatures here, but they were the small fish of the pond. Now, the king is back, and he's not happy about what we did to his palace. It damned us the first time, then Dr. Shea the second. I won't be played a fool for the third. It'll be back soon. I know it will be. It went back down into the dark to hunt, but it'll come back up, eventually. Its maddening whispers will fill the air, and its clattering bones will come snapping through the streets, but I won't be here. The next time that tower light comes on, I'm letting whatever arrives take me. It has to be a better fate than whatever that demonic beast has in store. Juarez thinks we can still find a way out of here before then. He's a fool. I feel sorry to leave him alone, but I'd feel worse putting my only friend down against his will. He's going to hold up in the safety of the station for as long as possible, and for his sake, I hope it's a while. If that being comes back, though, even all the measures that you assured would keep us safe won't be enough. If you pieces of shit actually come back to this place and find this letter, then the least you can do for all I gave to this organization is tell my family I loved them, and I'm sorry I never made it home. Burn in hell, Dr. Brand. My hand trembled hard as I pinched the note between it, soaking up the terrible words I'd just read. There were too many things to process here, too many variables that made my stomach drop to the deepest pits of the abyss. The multiple creatures it spoke of, the fact that one of them, supposedly the most horrific one, would return to this place at some point. The worst part was the overall implications of it, however. The fact that these people, the very ones that seemingly conquered this place, not only fell to it, but couldn't find a way to escape when things fell apart. If the organization who started this mess couldn't get out, what chance did I have? Doubling over, I finally gave in to the sickness relentlessly tearing at my innards. Its steady tug had overwhelmed me as I finished the letter, and I couldn't bear it anymore. What came out wasn't the chips from earlier, though. That would have been preferable, despite my need for its sustenance. No, what poured out of my mouth was a generous amount of what looked like blood. A puddle of blood with a single, fleshy wad of something splattered in the middle. It looked like a chunk of raw meat. Letting out a low whimper of fear, I fell back against the wall of the cliff face and held myself tight, shivering in my new dead man's jacket. "Anytime you want to wake up, Hensley," I said softly. "Please, wake up." My pity party would have to wait. I went to lay my head back against the wall to release the tears that had begun pooling in my eyes, but something caught them first. High above the town, peering at me from over the buildings, the radio tower light was back on, its red stare dreadful and intense. Snapping the note back up and uncrumpling it from my fist, I pored over a part that had terrified me when reading. The next time that tower light comes on, I'm letting whatever arrives take me. The light wasn't just a radio tower beacon. It was a warning signal. A signal that something from the abyss had made its way up and was currently stalking the streets. As if on cue, I heard a shriek echo out across the town that made my skin itch and crawl. My teeth hurt from its shrillness, and I instantly began hot-footing it down the road. From where I heard it, it had to be clear on the other side of the shelf. That meant, if I was fast, I could beat it back to the tower. If the note was right, it was the only real safe place on this nightmarish cleft of rock. That was, unless it was the eldritch horror that the same letter warned about. I tried not to think about that as I ran. I was already barely finding the hope to keep myself moving, and if I gave in to that despair, I was afraid I might stop. I don't know how long I ran for. Time has a way of blurring on adrenaline, especially when all you see is dark shapes blurring past you as you move. Eventually, I found my way back to my new sanctuary and into my room, sliding under the desk once more and hugging myself. Whatever was out there, it sang its screeching song for a long, long time. Over and over, it wailed like an angry cat, yowling out pained gasps and warbled sobs. I could almost trace its path through town as the screams pierced every wall like they were paper until finally I heard it begin to fade. It moved back toward one of the far cliffs of the shelf, then slowly hollered into the abyss until it joined it. I haven't gone back out since. I have all my new belongings gathered in the room with me, and I tried plugging my charger into an outlet just to see. To my shock, it actually worked, and I felt unmatched joy when I saw my phone power on once more. It makes me wonder if the power really is still on in this place, but everything is so rotten that the bulbs on everything are simply shot. I was a little disheartened when I didn't see any messages or calls returned, but given what I now know about this place, I'm not surprised. I don't know how I got here, but it's clear that nobody from the outside is going to be able to get in touch with me. At least, that was what it seemed like until I checked here. Somehow, this one went through. For some reason, the tower that they have set up here is blocking everything else except for my connection with Reddit. Whether that's because they blocked contact here for secrecy, but forgot to add the site to their list, or just because it doesn't take a lot of connection to post on here, I don't know. I can see it went through, though, and that brings me more joy than you can possibly know. However, like I mentioned, some things won't load right. I see that I have notifications, but I can't get the page to load, and though the post shows on my profile and I can see the confirmation there, when I click on it for more details, the app just crashes. One of the new to-do items on my confusing list is to see if I can find a way to get a better signal up in the radio room. For now, though, just knowing that my post made it out there, and that you all are seeing it, is more than enough reassurance. I apologize to anyone who actually tried to reach out for help on my behalf. I fear that you may have just set the police on a wild goose chase. I'm not sure how I got here, but I don't think anyone is coming to find me. For now, I just need to lay here for a bit and catch my breath, mentally and physically. There's so much to think on, and so much I need to digest in terms of this place and what might be going on here. One thing is for certain, though. The person who left the note made it very clear that I'm on a time limit to escape this place, And if I don't get looking fast, I might end up like who I can only assume is Juarez upstairs. I'll update you again when I figure out more, and if I'm not dead by then. Pray this goes through for me.